the COVID situation, what you've learned and where we're going to take this in 2022 and beyond. So does everybody just want to quickly introduce themselves and tell a bit of a little story introduction about themselves initially? Yes, would that work?
Yeah.
Okay, should we start with you, Susie?
Yep. Okay, I've worked in the business, I was just adding up, 27 years, which makes me prehistoric. Promoting initially and then getting into tour management via that. And then I've done all sorts of different things in festivals, and when I've come back to touring the last few years, during COVID, I started a support group for anyone working in the music business, which sometimes I sneak the odd post onto the MMF Facebook. In case anyone's interested, we do have managers come along. We're mostly crew now, a few performers and a few sort of connected industries, but it's grown out of kind of support during COVID and our industry shutting down and everything that meant, to now really having an aim about making touring better, supporting each other. It's a brutal job at times, but it's always better when you're connected with the community. And I'm also part of the tour production group, which Wob Roberts chairs, which I'll let him explain a bit more about that.
Great, and that's a great segment. Wob, do you want to tell us about you?
Yeah, well, if Susie's prehistoric, then I'm sort of before time, because I've been in the business for about 40 years now. Yeah, very much like Susie, before COVID, production managed some rather nice tours with Robbie Williams for 19 years. I looked after Coldplay, One Direction. Currently working with Duran Duran, and then hoping to move back onto Sam Smith later this year. During lockdown, myself and a bunch of like-minded, well, we actually met over a wake for an old friend, but a bunch of production people got together and formed TPG, and with the idea of basically how we get back to touring after COVID, and that went on to how do we get back to touring in a better way, which is sort of the point of this meeting. And we sort of knocked everything down to basically 3 basic pillars of welfare, sustainability, and diversity, and that's where we're at the minute.
Fantastic, thank you. And can we go to Rich, because Rich, you were the one that introduced us to Pembe. So I'd like to start with you, and then we can introduce her.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, hi, my name is Rich. I started a management company with a friend, Hiroki, maybe 12, 13 years ago. So we look after A.G. Cook, actress, Anna Calvi, Crystal Fighters, Deer Hunter, Hannah Diamond, Jay Rick, Martha Skye Murphy, Mount Kimby, and a label called PC Music. So it's a pretty broad group of artists in the more live space, but coming from electronic side as well as coming from the more band side. And yeah, I suppose through the last couple of years, when everyone's been sort of having more time to reflect and work things out, we were just looking at doing our sort of diversity and inclusion and sustainability meetings weekly, and we were just talking about ways we can just bring aspects into the sort of company centrally, so that it, rather than doing ad hoc actions, we were just building the information centrally, so that whenever we needed people, it's like, oh, well, that's the sort of crew, which is we've got like a diversity group, a resource that we put together, so that we can start to address the sort of lack of representation. And just having spent some time looking into that, that led me to Pembe, and like a lot of the incredible work she's involved in, and she also introduced me to a lot of other incredible groups, alongside also Joanne Croxford, who I presume you know, Wob, and I presume everyone possibly knows, who's also been,
she's my assistant on Duran Duran.
And yeah, she's been like an amazing help for us, and just really helping build out the resources and understanding, so that we can try to address like the lack of representation.
Great. And you introduced Annabella and myself to Pembe, and I scheduled a Zoom with her and spoke with her. And Pembe, you blew me away with your story and the things you're doing in the live world. And I wanted to have a platform to actually showcase you and give your story a wider audience as well, because I think what you're doing is just so very important. So I wanted to introduce you, and can you tell everybody on here a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hello. Thank you, everyone. It's lovely to be on a panel with Rich, with Wob, with Susie. So I am a backstage creative. That's the best way of saying it. I've kind of dove into loads of different bits: stage management, live audio, tour management, production management. And I've had the pleasure of meeting Wob and being on some of the TPG conversations as well, which is really great for them to open up a space for someone as young as me to kind of come in and feel safe there. And also was just on the back lounge with Susie last night, which was really great discussion and an amazing group of people that are willing to kind of open the door for a lot of the younger generation, and also met Rich. So I run PTOP Productions, which is for women, trans and non-binary people that work behind the scenes, screens and lens. And another strand that I have to that is PTOP Academy, which is training, shadowing and mentoring opportunities, predominantly for young people and racially minoritized people. So trying to diversify backstage crews from it being a lot of white cis men a lot of the times. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. So I wanted to talk about touring as we knew it in the past, touring as it was, how you guys navigated through the lack of touring and what you thought of and what you figured out to move forward. I mean, well, obviously, it's so wonderful to be on a call and a Zoom about touring and have two females there. When I started off years ago, there were no females in the production, tour management, or any of those roles. So it's great to see women breaking into this industry. It's really especially great to see young people. And I wanted to discuss was there anything that you have learned during COVID that you're taking forward that you would like to share to our management community? We are in a period of change, but it's a great period of change. And there's a way that we can start fresh and do things differently and learn from things in the past after having the time to reflect. So who can I start with? How about you, Mr. Roberts, since you're sitting there looking very pensive? What did did being off the road teach you? What did you think about? What did you figure out? And what are you changing moving forward?
Being off the road taught me that actually I really enjoyed my job being on the road. But at the same time, to appreciate the family around you and everything that you've got with it. And therefore make the most of it while you can. What we're trying, we've always known that the job that we do is hard and demanding. And when it started out, it definitely was a boys' club because it was mainly boys' bands that were starting it off. The guys got into bands, the girls looked at the boys in the bands. And so it was definitely a boys' club to start with. I've been very lucky in the fact that even back in my early days, we had girls on the road. And that always made it better. It was one thing that we always knew, that when you had a couple of women on the bus, then you usually had a better time on the road. So more of that, please. We're trying to, as much as diversity is very, very important, bringing in the youth, I think at the minute, is even more important. Bringing in people like Pembe. There's a lot of, the biggest problem that we're facing right now at the minute is a lack of personnel. And so getting the youth to actually come in and engage with us, as opposed to just be wanting to come in to be a pop star, getting them to actually engage to become backstage artists as opposed to front stage artists. That is our biggest challenge. And whether that's, it's the youth of every gender, color, whatever, that side of it is the important bit. That's the bit that's most important that we need to concentrate on right now, is actually bringing young people in to cover for the old people like me that really should be retiring.
And as music managers, how can we play a role in bringing in young people? Like where do we go to find young people? And there's also, I mean, Rich, I suppose that this is a question.
I'm going to step back in on top of that with your question right there. As music managers, I think you guys need to give people like myself and Susie the leeway to bring in youth and to bring in young people, rather than relying on, well, are they any good? We need the best all the time. And we would never actually employ somebody we didn't think could do the job. But when a young black girl comes in and says, okay, I'm your audio tech, most people turn around and go like, well, what have you done before? Rather than, oh, come on board. Let's see what you're doing. That, to me, is the biggest thing that the management side can give us, is the leeway to actually do what we want to do.
That's a really an important and honest thing to say. So a lot of the pushback is coming not necessarily only from within the production and tour management community. It's also coming from our own management community. And we need to look in the mirror at the decisions and the choices that we're making and be a part of leading the way. Hi, Susie, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, just to follow on from that, I guess budgets have always been tight, and it's always about the bottom line, and that's the manager's role, to make as much money as possible. But post-pandemic, things have really changed, and the pressure is on more than ever, times 100. Fees have gone down. Seems to be, it's the way it's going. It's ever more competitive. Who knows what ticket sales are going to be like? At the moment, they're down for some tours anyway. Who knows how many festivals will survive this summer? It's a really uncertain territory. We have war. We have fuel prices going up. We have COVID is still going on. And I'd love to hear what, other people have had on this call, but I've definitely found already, because I talk to crew all the time, and have had in the last week 3 tour managers, 2 of whom are quite high profile, saying, don't know if I want to do this anymore. The pressure is so extreme. And quite often that comes from the top. It comes from the management trying to do their jobs, but also there's obsession with the bottom line, and sometimes not always realizing that this is going to be a weird year. Like Wob said, massive shortage of crew, really big shortage of people coming into the industry, and to make room for those people might mean some of the costs go up a bit, even if whether people are getting paid or not, whether it's a token place or, there might still be hotel costs. It's an extra bunk on the bus. It's someone else to feed. But the only way we're going to have new people come into this industry, if people are given that opportunity and possibly shadow roles or training roles. And we need management support on that. I think sometimes the way the money is spent needs a little bit of looking after, and that also really encompasses the welfare of everyone on that tour under all this extra pressure that we now have.
Wow, that's really important. And Rich, do you have any input, speaking on behalf of the managers, on what Susie just said? Like, how should managers navigate that? If a production manager comes to them and says, hey, we have this new person that we want to try out, we want you to take them on board. Like, how does that feel as a manager when you're approached with that question?
I think overall, like we try to be like as open-minded and positive about that situation, because you want to grow like long-term teams, and if you can support someone's development, that, and then they're doing a great job with the artist, then you're both winners, you know, because that person's going to stick with the artist and that there's a good relationship. I think just from the experience right now, like it's really, like you said, the pressure is kind of insane. Everybody's just going for like everything, and there's all at once. There's, you know, obviously we always had the ebbs and flows of campaigns and tours before, where it's just like everybody has been writing and they're now on. So just the availability of crew is really hard, and it feels, well, like there's almost like there's a lot of new people coming through, which is really exciting, and then there's the really established, expensive, best people around, and trying to find like a kind of affordable balance with also a limited amount of people available, and people keep chopping and changing. It has been really difficult because fundamentally, you know, we have to do the best for the artists we represent, and that, well, certainly from our perspective, isn't like, oh, what does the bottom line look like first? It's more like, how do we create the best, the most incredible
and have
performance and art, and the money follows. But in terms of the actual crew, I suppose one like practical step we took was like there was like a experienced TM that we all got on quite well with, and we brought him in to try to to meet like the representation aspect, to help us find crew, but with like clear goals in terms of the representation of the crew, and represent like being a reflection of the artist, you know, because we work with like a diverse range of artists, but also to be somebody that can then be like a person with the experience to not mentor but help some of the younger crew alongside, because then we're mitigating the risk of an inexperienced person with the artist, which, you know, we all want the same end point, but we also need to make sure the artist has the best show. So I think that's just one approach, and I mean, we haven't done it long term or anything yet, so I can't say whether it's going to be a success or not. But I think that's just one like practical step we took to try to address the kind of new generation, which is really exciting to see come through, and then just like the older, more established crew.
And it's about like getting those two different types of crew and tour managers and production people to actually work together, and to have the older ones pass the baton on willingly to the newer ones, and trying to, you know, navigate that with your budgeting. With everything that's going on, how have you noticed that, like, are you having to hire more people that have less experience? Like, how are you navigating this with everything that's going on right now? Are you finding yourself you said there's a shortage of staff. So are you having to hire more lower cost people to do the same job? How is this affecting you in 2022?
So is that aimed at me or
and it's aimed at you and Susie and Rob, just people who you know, we said there's a real shortage of talented people out there. So how are you dealing with that right now?
Helping them as best we can.
And Pembe, when I met you, you told me when you were a teenager, you started mentoring young people in production, and you've actually, like, even before there was a shortage, you had already gotten out there and started training and started like getting the next generation ready. How do you find people to work with? Where do you look for them? What can we as managers, you know, what should we be looking for when we're trying to find people as long-term crew people to grow with our artists? How, you know, why should we work with you? Why should we call you? And what can you teach us?
I mean, for me, it's like you can't be what you can't see. So representation is key. It's important to be able to be reflective of the artists that you work with amongst your crew as well. You know, for me, I'm also a youth worker, and I have been for about 8 years. So I'm quite passionate about giving back to young people that are from disadvantaged communities that might not necessarily see that these are possible career paths for them. I mean, I was the only woman out of 59 guys on a music production and business course and stuck at it. And everybody thought that I would have left it before finishing the course, and I stayed at it. And I've worked in the sound warehouses with loads of blokes, and I've gone on tours and lifted flight cases where I've had loads of comments made at me, and believe it or not, I can lift quite a lot more than a lot of the blokes that I've worked with. And you know, I think that you just have to give people an opportunity, same way you've become a manager through an opportunity. Same way Susie, Wob, Rich has got to where they have through, you know, opportunities. I think that sometimes people are so used to, you know, nepotism can be good, but I think it can also be bad sometimes. I think it doesn't allow other people who don't look like you to come through the door sometimes. It's very rare for me to go on a job that's at a certain level where I see diversity. Diversity to me might not be the same for everyone else. Diversity doesn't mean just getting a load of women that are also white on a job. It means getting people that are trans, non-binary, getting people that are black, that are brown, that are different colors, that are different religions, that might not talk like you. You know, I code switch a lot. I don't talk like this to my friends. I mean, I was saying this on the background yesterday. I think we can all adapt, and the only way we're going to learn is by actually getting the opportunity. I'm only here and able to even be on this call or be connected to someone like you, Annalise, or Rich, or Wob, or Susie, through actually knocking on doors and rattling those gates a little bit, and sometimes having those uncomfortable conversations. We have to agree to disagree sometimes, but you don't all have to be on the same page, you know. It's like Wob saying, sometimes it's better to keep certain information to yourself, but also trust in what you're doing, because you do know that those people do deserve an opportunity. So I'm really big on shadowing. So I currently mentor about 9 young people. I don't get paid a penny for it. I started mentoring at 16 years old. I'm only 24 now. And I've probably mentored about 50 odd young people, and I love every bit of it. And I think, like I said, you just can't be what you can't see. You know, there are a lot of amazing racially minoritized artists out there, but their crews and their TMs are not reflective of who they are. And that's because they've only been told of the people that are already up in the industry. I think that there are some amazing people that have had some, you know, great success in their careers and some longevity in what they're doing, that are now really open to giving people an opportunity and allowing them to just come in and see if they can do it. You know, attitude also goes a long way. It's not just based on who you are. If you can't be a nice person, I don't want to work with you. You can offer me £1 million, still don't want to work with you. You know, I think you just have to be respectful to people. And sometimes that also goes for the artists, being respectful towards the tour manager, towards the production manager, towards their crew. You know, we're all human. Just treat people how you'd like to be treated.
You know, it's really interesting when you talk about what it felt like for you to be the only woman with a lot of men. And when you said that, I thought about, like, as a female artist, what it must be like to go on tour, like, for a whole summer and not have people that look like you, or somebody that might understand what you're going through as a female, and just wondering, like, that would feel like for an artist. And that could be, and I know that when I was managing, a lot of artists wanted to have a female manager because they were like, there are things that as a female I can't relate to with my artist. And just, I wanted to, but then you also brought up the physical work that needs to be done in production, and you know, lifting it up and carrying it. And I know that you're strong, but I mean, you know, this is an honest question to you, Wob. And, you know, have you ever had anybody that physically was, you know, that was technically great, but physically could not necessarily do all of the traditional roadie work? Or, you know, how has that been? And we're just having an honest discussion.
Well, if you want me to be completely honest, then the men are worse than the women. They're the ones that won't lift or can't lift. Whereas when I was a backline tech back in the day, if there was a woman on the stage crew, you'd want to work with her because you knew she was going to work harder than anybody else, and you'd have fun doing it. And so these days, there's very little that you need to do on the road that actually requires overt strength anymore. There's so many forklifts and lifting aids and that sort of things. It's not about, it's more about stamina. And believe me, the people that are in a minority usually have a damn sight more stamina than anybody else because they're proving themselves. Not that they should need to, don't get me wrong, they shouldn't need to, but they do. And they push themselves just as hard, you know, and they're the easiest and nicest people to work with these days. The people like me are the ones you don't want to work with because we're jaded, set in our ways and don't want to change.
I think that you very much want to change, and you know that I really do appreciate you being here. I wanted to talk about, you know, how things have changed post Brexit. We've had so many people, we've heard stories about people going on the road and their equipment being not allowed into a country or having trouble with their merchandise because of new Brexit rules for UK artists. I mean, you know, how is that going to affect touring moving forward, and what adjustments do managers and do you guys have to make in light of the new way of movement? It's been an issue that has been very important to us at the MMF about, you know, freedom of movement. But
well, I have a case in point right now,
mm-hmm.
Where I need to get something down to Ibiza for the IMS, and I'm getting pushback from artists and management about when that gear needs to leave, as if I didn't know. And I won't say they won't believe me, but there is a lot of pushback on the fact that I'm insisting that if you want it there on Thursday, then it has to drive on Monday. And they don't, well, it's not going to be ready. Well, in that case, it's not going to go. But you must be able to do something. I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. Paperwork and queues on the M20 are just crucifying us at the minute. Time. Just give us more time to do things because it's taking a lot more time than normal. That's the biggest, and it's the one thing you can't buy. You know, I can, if I can find somebody, I can employ another person. That's not a problem. I can't buy time.
And are all of you finding that like the paperwork and the rules, things that you need to know are readily available? Are there certain things that you suggest that we look at? Like I know that like certain documents, certain carnets, everything needs to be filled out. Are they easy to find? Are they difficult to find? Are certain countries turning out to be more problematic? I mean, what is your thoughts in moving forward?
Susie, have you had any experience with this yet? I'm literally about to do my first proper European tour.
I do, yeah. You know what? It's so funny this. I wish there was a one-stop shop of where you could find out about all this stuff, but it's so fragmented and it's changing. I mean, like just COVID alone. So I just did like a mini promo run a couple of weeks ago, and we just did, you know, usual suspects, Paris, Berlin, Amsterdam, Cologne. And we had a truck and we had, you know, buses and whatever, and it was simple enough. What was more complicated was COVID, because trying to find out what the rules and regs were there was something else. And it's a whole nother trying to think out the box. You know, it was like one thing of, you know, okay, we're going into France. What does France need? We're going into Germany. What does Germany need? But then within Germany, each city had a different set of rules. And we had one situation, we were in Cologne, we did a TV show, and they wanted us all to test once we got there. So then we weren't doing daily testings. I have done that previously, but now we're not. And then it was like, well, what happens if someone tests positive in the TV show test? So then we all panicked. So got everyone to test that morning, because we thought, well, at least if we find out before we get to the TV show, we can control the situation. Rather than get to the TV show, it gets declared to the authorities, and then suddenly you're in this whole format. Then we travel overnight to Berlin. In Berlin, everyone had to test to get into the venue, as well as show their vaccine certificate. That really slowed. It made the showtime an hour late because it was so slow. So I've been using that as an example, whether it's whatever kind of paperwork you're talking about, there is a lot more, and it's a learning curve. And I know we're all leaning on each other to try and find, how was it for you? Because there is no definite information about anything that I can find. I mean, you know, maybe Wob and Pembe might differ, but that's
the live website has got basic information on carnets. The people like the freight agents, Rocket, Global, Sound Moves, they can all help with that sort of thing. Your trucking companies can help with that, but the smaller bands that I used to deal with, I was doing it. The way around it is what the customs people need to do. People that don't know are the people that actually have the officials that are doing it. They're not up to speed yet either. So you being able to tell them, explain to them, I fill in this bit here, I sign this bit here, you take that, and I keep this bit. As long as you know that, then that way you can actually prevent problems further down the line. Because one thing about a carnet is it has to be signed out and signed back in again technically into each transaction. When you leave a territory, you have to leave a piece of documentation there. When you enter a territory, a piece of documentation needs to be done there. So there's yellows and there's whites, and you need to be able to you need to know your stuff when you go through to that customs office, so that you know that they're doing it right for you. Because if they don't, you get to the next customs office and they pick up on something that your last customs guy did wrong, then you're stuck for another hour and a half. So you need to learn the process as much as anybody else.
And you need to have trust in the production people.
If you're a small band and you're all in a splitter van together, make sure that everyone's sort of knuckled down and gone, well, this is how we fill out a carnet, guys, so that you can all help each other when you get stuck at that French border. You know, going into well, actually we're going into Switzerland, yeah, because that's the next place you have to do when you leave London.
And I also wanted to bring up another uncomfortable subject, but I think it needs to be talked about. I've had some managers tell us about people of color that were treated differently at borders when entering countries. And you know, this is something that nobody wants to talk about, but we have to talk about. You know, and has it gotten worse after COVID? Has it gotten better? And what do we need to pay attention to as managers when we are trying to diversify, but we have to deal with the realistic realities that, you know, they will, you know, some countries treat people of color differently at the borders, and this could slow down a tour that is already going to be perhaps under pressure. So I know it's the things that nobody wants to talk about, but we're here to talk about these things.
I've not experienced it. I can honestly say that.
Not experienced it, okay.
I've definitely had customs people treat people of color differently on a border, but not within Europe. That definitely more in America, South America, and the Middle and Far East. But touring Europe, the basic touring around here, not had any of that problem. Not had that problem.
Okay. Okay. And I also wanted to talk about merchandise. What do managers, are you having trouble with merchandise being stopped at borders? Or do managers need to understand that there is going to be issues with merchandise and find out other ways? Or more managers, as far as you guys can see, dealing with tours, and more managers getting things done locally in local territories rather than bringing them out on the road? And have you had any, is it too early to make those calls yet?
Susie, have you had any problems with that yet? I know that the issue that we've got, that I've come across, is that when you're doing stuff on a vehicle, getting merchandise out of the country to go to Spain, for instance, where you're going to have a promoter who's going to work there, the Spanish promoter might have an EORI, which will get actually your port of entry into Europe is France, and France are insisting on a French EORI. So you've got to start thinking about engaging your French record company as well as your Spanish record company when you're doing merch.
Right.
Literally just gone through that this morning.
Oh gosh. Hey, Rich, you had your hand raised?
Oh yes, sorry, I can't really, I'm not much of an expert on the first or third question, or an expert on the second, but I just, in terms of artists of color on the road, we've definitely experienced, there's 2 Black artists we work with, and they've definitely been on the receiving end of racist abuse. One was assaulted, and it's something that I would obviously spoke to them in quite a lot of depth about, but it's something I've definitely like to have more resources and understanding of how to best support the artist. From a practical approach, we reported it to the local police, to the promoter, to the agent, and said, like, we're not going to be working with that. In one case where it was the venue staff, we're not going to be working at that venue ever again. But it's definitely an area where I feel like, I'm not sure. Doesn't feel like there's a, unless and I could be completely missed, but an agreed response to how you react as an industry to that, so that it is actually addressed, and it's like, okay, well, that venue or that promoter or whatever is removed or not.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
The good thing about being involved with the MMF is that it gives you a platform for exposing those kind of behaviors and warning people of situations where people were badly treated, and encouraging them to make decisions based on that information. So I mean, you never know it's going to happen until it happens, but we are a community of managers. And when these things happen, I think the most important thing to do is to be vocal about it and tell other managers about it. The truth is, hard to swallow, but it's the only way that you can get to change. So that's my input. I wanted to also talk about mental health on the road. Mental health is something that everybody is talking about. We've all dealt with it a lot during COVID, and has being on the road, does it feel, are we dealing with different issues now than we dealt with before because of the periods of isolation? Are there things that we need to be aware of in taking care of our artists, our production crew, after being not on the road for so long? Are there certain things that we need to look out for? Hi, Susie.
Yeah, I feel I'm quite qualified, the amount of talking I've done about this one. First obvious one, and we touched on it already, is about being a bit more flexible and a bit kinder, which isn't just hippie speak, especially going back to work and going from pretty much 2 years out to then be expected to deliver, bosh it out fast, quite often with multiple hats on, less crew, more last minute as well, because things have been so uncertain and still we have cancellations. And that's really, really, well, it's hard on the artists as well as the crew. And I always think the best tours are the ones where it doesn't matter if it's 5 people on the road or 20 or 100 people on the road, when there's some kind of family and some kind of check-in service. If someone's having a rough time, who can they go and talk to? But it's about being really accepting of each other, that some of us are a bit rusty, some of us aren't quite up to speed, some of us have forgotten a few things, and it's taking a little while just to kind of, you know, plus adding in new people. You know, the landscape has changed, and I think that does, for touring to be better and to be, you know, more healthy in every aspect of the word, it does mean us kind of looking out for each other a bit more, you know, trying to sort of soften this brutal landscape that touring quite often is, which as well, I think, makes it more of a welcoming community, attracts new people, means they stay, you know, crucially means they stay.
Hi, Pembe.
Hi. I think one thing that I didn't know was a thing was we hear a lot about riders, and one thing that I've been hearing a lot about is like an access or a care rider, which I received from an artist recently about their needs whilst kind of on the roads, whether that was for a disability or whether that was for a mental health need that they may have. It was really interesting, just kind of how they prefer to be given information, how they react to certain things and triggers, and how they may, you know, become if they are feeling a bit more heightened within a space. And I think that for a long time, people were really scared to say that they had an additional need or a mental health issue, because mental health's only been looked at in a more open way in the last couple of years, really. I think before it was more like, oh God, that person's got something, that's just an extra baggage. But actually, we've all got a level of mental health or accessibility needs in different ways. And I think that looking into having something like an access or a care rider, whether that's for your artists even, or whether that's, you know, accepting and respecting that some of the tour managers or the crew members that you might have may have also some accessibility needs and different ways that they'd prefer communication to be done. I think that's something that definitely has been coming up and something I've been thinking about a lot lately. It shouldn't deter you to work with somebody that may have an additional need or might suffer with some sort of mental health issues. I think definitely in the lockdown, we've all realized that it has been quite a depressing last 2 years. And it does take a lot out of you, like Susie's saying. Some people might be a bit more rusty, and some people might actually struggle to do things as quick as they used to before. And just be kind, you know, and be supportive as a manager to the tour manager and to the crew that you hire in to support your artists. Because if we're not in a good place, it's then quite difficult to support your artist to be in a good place. Yeah, that's my 2 pence.
I think that was a really great 2 pence. Thank you. I never heard of that, but I'm writing this down. Hi, Susie.
I just thought, can I share some resources here if people are interested?
Absolutely. This is what we want you here for. Yes.
Yeah, first of all, Pembe, who was on the back lounge last night, and it's all about how do we encourage young people to join our crews. Big thing about diversity, I'll share that. And then the back lounge with Tour Production Group ran 3 workshops earlier this year, and it's about a lot of this stuff we're talking about. One is about better mental and physical health on tour, and it's applicable to everybody. Also, another one on how to be an ally, which is very much, again, we've been talking about, but quite often people want to do the right thing and not quite sure how to, or a bit scared of doing the wrong thing and offending. And then the other one, which we probably haven't got time to go into, is sustainability on tour, which is another massive thing. So I'll put it in the chat, and then if anyone wants to watch them, share them, do what they like with them. I'm really happy to share.
No, that's really great. Oh, hi, Rich.
It's just sort of interlinked with Pembe's point. Something we were talking about implementing was almost also just like an unexpected behaviours on tour, so that there's the artist is setting out like the guidelines of how they want the crew, or they expect the crew to behave, and so it creates a better environment for the artist, but it also adds like you know, like from our side, like more accountability for people that step out of line, because there's no, you know, rules or whatever on the road. Like people can behave, you know, they obviously have to be professional, but there's different attitudes, and I think that also then at least gives you the accountability to say, well, look, you know, you fell short of this, so that's why, you know, we're going to change the crew accordingly, or people obviously, you know, touch wood, always respond in a really positive manner, and it creates a better touring environment for the artists and for everyone.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we are getting more towards the end, but I did want to put all of you on the spot and just go to each of you and just say, you know, if there was 3 ways that you could think of how to make touring better in 2022, what would those 3 ways be? Just what comes onto your head, first of all. So, Susie, what are your 3 tips to how to make touring better in 2022?
Oh God.
I know,
You
I'm
know
putting
what?
you on the spot, but it's
I
all,
really want to refer to, I'll put another link. We wrote on Tour Production Group a mental health charter, and it's a 1-page thing that tours can adopt of really quick, easy things you can do on your tour to make your tour better for everyone. So I'll stick that link in as well. 3 of the things would be being inclusive. So whether that's, if you have, again, whether it's artists or crew or whoever, people in recovery or people with any kind of disability, seen or unseen, but it's including everyone, making sure everyone has a voice, making sure everyone has a place to go to if they have an issue, not always the managers. So almost having a little bit of, before the tour starts, saying, you have an issue, whatever it is, these are your safe people you can confidentially go and talk to. And last one is more and more, I think tours are made up of, I think it used to be a lot more the rock and roll tours, the healthy tours, that, you know, and it's always such a mad mixture of people you tour with. And again, just trying to make sure everyone gets their needs covered in some way, whether they're in a running club or whether they want to drink Jack Daniels and live on Haribo. But it's sort of like, instead of it always being the unhealthy people that always took the option before, now it's a much more rounded environment, which just means tours go longer, people are happier. I'll dig out that link.
thank you. Rich, can I put you on the spot? 3 ways that you think we could make touring better in 2022.
Well, I suppose the one thing that we did internally, which I think has had, you know, like immediate, tangible action, and I can't lay credit to it. It was like one of the team, Mina, who does great work with She Said So, was that we should do a race, sex, and identifier audit. We did that of a team ourselves, of the artist internal teams, the artist external teams. And then you just get the real picture of how your team, well, how is it diverse at all? Is it really representing the artist? And then you can make, you know, you can see you actually changing the team over time, rather than, because you can think, I think we're doing a good job, but when you write it down, you're like, actually, some of it was really, really quite sobering, to be honest. And that was something really productive that has worked, and has led to like increasing, improving like the representation across our teams. And otherwise, I would highly recommend speaking to Pembe and Joanne, because they've been incredibly helpful and knowledgeable.
Thank you. Pembe, 3 ways that we as managers can make touring better in 2022.
Treat people how you'd like to be treated. Be kind. It doesn't hurt to be kind. I'd say real diversity beyond just looking at getting some women on your crew, but actually be a bit more reflective of your artists and think about what's going to help them to feel comfortable whilst on the road. And give people an opportunity, you know, rather than judging, just give people an opportunity and trust that we can do our jobs, whatever roles we are in. Just trust that we are hired because we can do what we say we're out to do, really.
Thank you. And that brings us to WOB. And I do think that there's an important message. We are dealing with you said that you were one of the elders, but you are forging the way and you're endorsing and you're co-signing the next generation. So
Well, thank you for that, because that's the plan.
that is the plan. And
that is the plan.
You brought up the big fact that, you are struggling. So if we are not getting things, if we're not things are changing, we're trying to maintain a workforce, we're trying to make it better for everybody so that when we do have tours, we can still have the best people. So three ways
to make it,
that we can make it better. Yes.
Plan ahead as opposed to tomorrow. Think about a good few months down the road before you even think about booking the tour. Think about what you're going to do on it before you go. So plan ahead, make your plans long term. Don't just think that you can do this tomorrow, because these days you can't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go away from the diversity because it's been pushed by everybody else. I'm going to go sustainability. Think about how you can make touring greener and better for the planet, because otherwise we won't have a planet to tour. And I don't think those two will pretty much cut it.
Yes.
I'll go back with Susie's. Be kind to everybody. Yeah, just let people be what they are, because even people like, even the old buggers, we know what we're doing out here on the road. Trust us to do our jobs properly. Don't try and second guess us. When we say something needs to be like this, it's not because we want it to be like that. We're actually trying to save you money. And we're just doing it the right way. It just doesn't always look like the right way. But yeah, sustainability, time, and trust.
Sustainability, time, and trust. That's a good way to end. I think that you are all like leading the way to a new and better live touring production and world. And as we're about to embark out and everything, I do appreciate all of the information that you gave us. There's a lot to take in, but there is a time, we are going through a time of change, but a change for the better. And I'm wishing you all wonderful trips on the road. We should probably talk about it at the end of the summer to see if there was any other revelations that came out after your trips on the road. But I wish you a great summer. You guys are going to be super busy, and thank you so much for making the time to share your knowledge and information with our MMF members. So thank you.
Our pleasure.